We learned Friday that Jack Smith's January 6th investigators sought information from Georgia Governor Brian Kemp in his probe of Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election. News of this comes as we not only await a possible indictment of Trump in that case, but as we're also waiting for similar action by Fulton County, Georgia DA Fani Willis, who's been investigating election interference there. And a key piece of evidence is what Trump has described as his perfect phone call to Georgia's Secretary of State.
So, look, all I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state.
According to NBC News, indictments in Fani Willis's sprawling investigation could be handed down as soon as a week from tomorrow. Joining me now, former House impeachment manager in Trump's second impeachment and chair of the Democratic Policy and Communications Committee, Congressman Joe Neguse of Colorado, and Charles Coleman Jr., civil rights attorney, former Brooklyn prosecutor, and MSNBC legal analyst, and the host of the Charles Coleman podcast. Gentlemen, welcome back to the Sunday Show. So, Charles, what do you make of Special Counsel Jack Smith requesting information from both Georgia Governor Brian Kemp and the Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger?
Well, Jonathan, prosecutors are going to go where the facts take them. And it's clear that Jack Smith is going down a road of where facts are taking him around not only January 6th involvement, but also election interference. And so his case is expanding to other jurisdictions where it is clear that Donald Trump was meddling and attempting to overthrow the election's results. And so that's why we're seeing this sort of expanded probe in terms of his investigation. And I suspect it's going to further influence whether we will see an indictment move forward and a prosecution on not just January 6th, but also election interference.
Right. And I left out the key part of my question, especially with a formal indictment imminent. I mean, right. Trump told the world that he got the target letter a week ago today. So what should we take from the fact that, you know, Raffensperger and Kemp are getting requests for information from the special counsel after that target letter went out?
The easiest thing that you can surmise from all of this is Jack Smith can do a number of things at one time. He's not limited to just focusing on Mar-a-Lago or January 6th. If the facts lead him to discover that more crimes have been committed, more indictments will come.
One more question to you, Charles, before Congressman, I promise I'll come to you. We're talking about two overlapping investigations. Right. There's special counsel's investigation, and then there's also Fulton County DA Fani Willis's investigation at the state level. Are they coordinating?
Probably not to a high degree. I think that there may be information that's shared between the two parties that wouldn't necessarily be unusual. But with respect to timing, for example, there's been a lot of conversation about how the different indictments could impact Donald Trump's schedule, especially in light of his campaigning around the 2024 election. With respect to that, I don't necessarily anticipate that they would be coordinating because Fani Willis is on an independent track as a state and local prosecutor. And Jack Smith is moving forward as a special counsel for the Department of Justice. So I don't necessarily know that either is worried about stepping on the other's toes, and that's ultimately going to be something that's sorted out in court anyway. So they may be sharing information, but as far as when to bring the indictments and scheduling, that's probably not something that they're worried about.
Okay. And Congressman, you were an impeachment manager in Trump's second impeachment, and that was all about January 6th. Were you surprised that incitement to insurrection was reportedly not mentioned in the target letter that Trump received from the special counsel?
Well, first, it's great to be with you, Jonathan. I agree with my colleague, Congressman Schiff. It's premature at this point. We don't necessarily know what charges the special counsel or the grand jury are necessarily contemplating. Sure. Of course, as you said, the only reason that we know any of this is because the former president disclosed his receipt of a target letter, which is clearly a very serious legal development. And we know from some reporting about the specific charges that were apparently referenced does not mean that the grand jury or the special counsel isn't looking at other charges or that they very well may pursue charges with respect to those statutes. What I would say is I trust the special counsel and the Department of Justice to faithfully execute their duties. We have an independent, impartial Department of Justice for a reason. And I think the special counsel has thus far pursued his duties in that way. And, I think it's important for it to be free of political interference. I'm far more concerned, to be candid, about some of what you showed at the top of the program, the ominous things that former President Trump has said leading up to so many of these different indictments and sort of undermining the fundamental rule of law, which is sacrosanct in our country.
Well, speak more about that, because as I said in the intro to this, to A Block, when Donald Trump sweats, he starts threatening people, and he starts putting out threats, whether it's the nation or individual people. He's gone after the special prosecutor. He's gone after the special prosecutor's wife. Why is that so dangerous? And can those threats be used against him in a court of law?
Yeah, with respect to your latter question, I'll defer to my friend, Mr. Coleman, who's active.
Right. And I realized that the moment it came out of my mouth.
But I will say this. I mean, this is not surprising. It's consistent with his course of conduct. He did this throughout his presidency, constant challenges to the rule of law, undermining the rule of law, the independence of the Department of Justice, veiled threats and the like. And unfortunately, that kind of conduct has metastasized in the modern House Republican caucus. We see that on full display every day in the House. I would like for my colleagues to take a step back, recognize again the independence and the impartiality of the Department of Justice from a law enforcement standpoint, and let the special counsel do his job and, again, decide what charges, if any, that ultimately he'll pursue.
One more question to you before I get Charles to answer that legal question that I asked you. The Speaker McCarthy saying that he supports expungement of the two impeachments. As Congressman Schiff said, there's no constitutional basis for this. But what's the Speaker up to by even talking about this? Yeah,
I mean, there's no constitutional basis to pursue this. Every legal scholar that has looked at it has said it's constitutionally dubious. This is another example of Speaker McCarthy, unfortunately, capitulating to the far right wing of his caucus, which has taken control of the House Republican caucus. He could be spending his time pursuing policies that actually matter to the American people, lowering costs, as House Democrats have done, growing the middle class. Instead, you find him again and again pursuing these, again, far right kind of political sideshows. You see that in the hearings that are happening every week, total waste of taxpayers' dollars. And now apparently pursuing this expungement, which of course has no legal meaning. I mean, you can't erase that the president acted the way he did on January 6th and in the days leading up to it, and that he was ultimately impeached for it and faced real consequences.
Oh, because we saw what we saw.
Yeah, we lived
live.
It, right?
Yes, and you lived it,
yeah.
Absolutely. So back to the legal question that I asked the congressman, but you are better qualified to answer, and that is the threats that Donald Trump is making, both on his social media platforms, but also in radio interviews, campaign rallies. Can they be used against him in a court of law?
They can't until they can. And what do I mean by that?
Yeah, I was going to say what?
Donald Trump has a history. This is a pattern of pushing the limit around fiery and dangerous rhetoric until he is held accountable. And that's not only in the criminal realm, it's also in the civil realm. If you think about the fact that this man is about to go to trial again with Elin Carroll in New York because of things that he violated after already being told, stop that. If you think about the fact that he also had an issue with respect to the judge here in New York with respect to the Alvin Bragg case. In that case, also talking about the judge, fiery rhetoric, dangerous, that really told the line. And then, of course, going to the ellipse, January 6th, this rhetoric ultimately sparking what was a Capitol insurrection. Until someone holds him accountable, and they can, it's ultimately going to be a question of, does someone act at his behest? Does someone act influenced by his actions? Did that inspire someone to do something that was harmful? The rhetoric itself is on the line. What takes it over the line of legality, Jonathan, is what happens afterwards. And unfortunately, we have to get too close to that line for any of us and any of our comfort before a legal decision can be made.
And one last question real quick. The classified documents trial has been set for May 20th, 2024. You're the lawyer. Should we expect even that date to be pushed back?
No, not at all. I think that even without any other argument for Donald Trump, the natural course of litigation is going to push that further than May 20th, 2024. A case like this, you're going to have lots of motions around discovery, lots of disputes, and that's going to push it further into the summer next year.
Oh, so it could. So May 20th, 2024, that date can be pushed.
Oh, yes.
Will be pushed.
Yes,
all right. Charles Coleman Jr., you're going to come back later on in the hour. Congressman Joe Neguse, thank you very much for coming in studio and coming back to the Sunday Show.